The hum didn't start in Adeline's ears, it started in her marrow. It was a low, subsonic vibration. Adeline stared at the liquid, her head throbbing with a hangover. She was turning 25. She reached for her phone to check for a happy birthday text, but her hand stopped midair. There, resting on her nightstand, was a book that hadn't been there when she'd fallen asleep. It was bound in leather, the color of a bruised plum, ancient and heavy. No title, no author. When Adeline touched the cover, the hum in her bones spiked into a sharp, electric sting. "What the hell?" she whispered. She looked around the room, her voice thin and foreign. The radiator clanked, a metallic heartbeat. The window was fogged with the damp cold of March. Everything was as she'd left it. Laundry, wine bottle, except for the book. She opened the first page. It was creamy vellum, smelling of ozone and old libraries. A single line of embossed script read, "The will is the weight. The weight is the way." Adeline let out a dry, nervous laugh. "Forrester, if this is a prank, it's expensive." Forrester didn't have the money for such a book, nor the stealth to sneak it in. She grabbed a ballpoint pen. She didn't believe in magic, but she did believe in hunger. Her $1.14 checking account meant breakfast was stale toast or nothing. On the first page, she wrote, "I want a breakfast that doesn't taste like a Tuesday. I want a vanilla latte and a chocolate croissant from that place on 4th. The one with the overpriced butter." She hesitated, her thumb tracing the vellum. A phrase floated to her mind unbidden. It felt like a key sliding into a lock. "This is what I want," she said aloud. The hum stopped instantly. The silence was absolute, a vacuum that made her ears pop. Then the air in her kitchen folded, a shimmering vertical slit in reality. It wasn't a flash of light, more like a glitch in a video, a frame that didn't belong. When it snapped shut, a white paper bag and a steaming cup sat on her counter. The scent of roasted beans and melted butter filled the room, aggressive and real. Adeline's heart hammered. She didn't reach for the coffee. Instead, she heard it, the frantic, rhythmic scritch, scritch, scritch of a pen moving against paper. She looked at her hand. Her ballpoint pen was still on the table 3 feet away. Slowly, her breath hitching, she flipped the book over to the very last page. In ink that looked like wet tar still glistening, a single command had formed. "Go to the corner of 5th and Main. Tie your shoe at 8:02 a.m. Do not look up." Adeline didn't eat the croissant. It felt like a bribe. She watched the clock. "It's a trick," she whispered to the empty kitchen. "Forrester's been planning this." But she knew Forrester didn't have the budget for reality-warping tricks. The specificity was the worst part. It wasn't a request. It was a coordinate. She looked down at her old beat-up sneakers, one lace already slightly loose. A cold shiver crawled up her spine. If she went, she admitted the breakfast wasn't a fluke. If she stayed, she was, what? A coward? Or the only sane person with a haunted book? She grabbed her coat and shoved the ledger into her oversized pocket. It felt heavier. The walk to 5th and Main took exactly 12 minutes. She knew this route well. Today, the street felt different. The morning fog clung to iron railings. Every person she passed felt like a threat. Did they have books in their pockets too? She reached the corner at 8:01 a.m. The intersection was a throat of the city. It was loud, chaotic, and smelled of exhaust and wet asphalt. Adeline stood by the lamppost, gripping the cold leather of the ledger. Her phone vibrated. 8:02 a.m. She didn't think. If she thought, she'd run. She dropped to one knee, the cold damp of the sidewalk soaking into her jeans. She pulled her left lace tight, her fingers trembling. Do not look up. She counted the stitches. Behind her, she heard the hiss of a city bus's air brakes. She heard the squeal of a bicycle, a sharp shout, then a sickening thud. Adeline's fingers froze on the lace. Her instinct screamed to jump up, to help, to see. Do not look up. The sounds that followed were a collage of urban trauma. Oh my God! Someone called 911. Adeline stayed on her knee, teeth chattering. She forced herself to finish the knot, focusing on a flattened piece of chewing gum. A pair of shoes entered her narrow field of vision. Charcoal gray Oxfords, polished. Not a speck of grime touched them. Adeline's breath hitched. She followed the trousers. The knot is a bit loose on the right, Adeline, a voice said. Smooth, professional. Who are you? She whispered, her forehead nearly touching her knee. An accountant, the voice replied, and you are currently in the black. Enjoy the croissant. The air shifted. The hum returned for a fraction of a second, then it was gone. Adeline scrambled to her feet, the do not look up rule forgotten. The man was gone, but 30 feet away in the intersection was the wreck. A city bus had swerved. The bus had plowed into a delivery van. The van was crumpled like a soda can. People were spilling out of the bus, some bleeding, all of them shouting. Adeline backed away, her hand over her mouth. She felt the weight of the book. She hadn't just tied her shoe, she had been the fulcrum. She turned and ran. She didn't go to work. She ran back to the apartment, lungs burning. She slammed the door to her apartment and locked all 3 bolts. She ripped the ledger out of her pocket and threw it onto the kitchen table. She grabbed the coffee and poured it down the sink. She watched the dark liquid swirl. Then she opened the paper bag. The croissant was golden, flaky, and smelled like heaven. She picked it up, her hand shaking, and threw it into the trash. I didn't want this, she sobbed, collapsing into her kitchen chair. The book sat on the table, silent and heavy. After a moment, the scratching began again. Adeline didn't want to look, but her eyes were drawn to the vellum. She flipped to the back. Under the command, a new line was forming. Debt settled. Balance maintained. Current status, 0. Below that, wish 2. Adeline stared at the blank space. The room was silent, save for the radiator. She felt the hum beginning again, faintly, deep in the soles of her feet. The book wasn't waiting for her to want something. It was waiting for her to realize she already did.